Nobody escapes being wounded. We are all wounded people, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how can we hide our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness in the service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Hey friends, it's Jimmy. That was a quote from Henry Nouwen, an author that's impacted me over the years, and it gets to the heart of what we want to talk about during this two-part series we're calling Broken and Beautiful. Now, before I go on, I just want to give a shout out to the anonymous artists at Madison Missions this last summer who drew the art for this series on a whiteboard and wrote Broken and Beautiful at the bottom. We were already planning a series on lament and gratitude, reflecting on the brokenness and beauty in the world, and this artwork confirmed that maybe God was saying, yo, you should talk about this. So let's talk about it. Our human hearts and the world we live in are broken and beautiful. We are wounded and invited to be healers in the world. And as we reflect on these realities, we are going to practice some responses together. Next time when we talk about the beautiful, we're going to practice gratitude or being thankful. But for now, as we spend some time together in the broken, we are going to practice lament. Let me start by trying to define what I mean by lament, because that's not a word or concept that we talk about enough. Lament is expressing our sadness, anger, pain, sorrow, or confusion to God. It's a crying out to Him, which means it's a form of prayer, reaching out to Him with our real emotions, raw and unfiltered pain about the brokenness of this world. And this could be about a particular injustice like violence or poverty. Or you can cry out in grief over some form of loss. You can also lament a personal struggle that you're dealing with. The point is that the world is messed up, and so are we. And God doesn't want us to pretend like it's all okay. He invites us to lament. But here's the thing. I'm bad at this. And my guess is that many of us are bad at this. And there's lots of reasons why I think that's true. But instead of trying to tell you my thoughts, I thought I'd just tell you some of my story. You see, I never wanted to learn how to lament, but I had the opportunity to learn it in the worst way possible. A week before I turned 18, a month into my senior year of high school, my brother Peter died. He had a leukemia. It's a form of blood cancer that he'd been diagnosed with 2 years prior to his death. And as his heart stopped beating and he stopped breathing, I remember my dad just screaming out. We're all just crying. It was the worst and most painful thing I've ever been through. And the days and weeks and even months after that were just a blur of emotions. Lament was a way for me to get those emotions out. I didn't know I was lamenting, but when I look back at how I responded, I'd say that I yelled at and cussed out God for allowing this to happen. It was like I was throwing punches at Jesus, just screaming, why Jesus, why? And then just getting so tired that I just fell into his arms. He was like, I'm here. I got you. I'll never leave you. I love you. I never wanted to learn how to lament. But I'm thankful that God invites it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Gratitude is next time. For right now, what we want you to know is that God welcomes lament. Here's one Bible passage that illustrates this. It's from Exodus, a book of the Bible about God rescuing his people out of slavery. And it says this, I'm reading from the Message translation. It says, the Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out. Their cries for relief from their hard labor ascended to God. God listened to their groaning stories. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw what was going on with Israel. God understood. That passage captures it so well. There's a broken and unjust system of slavery that is dehumanizing and exploitative, and God's people cry out and lament. And I love the choice of translation at the end of that. It says, God understood. These kinds of stories are all over the Bible. The book of Psalms is packed with laments. Heck, there's even an entire book of the Bible called Lamentations. But even if those stories weren't there, God understands our pain, not just because he invites us to lament, but because he has experienced the brokenness of this world. God entered the world as a human. Jesus lived in the brokenness. He lived in the brokenness. There's a story of Jesus weeping over the death of his friend Lazarus, weeping even though he knew he was going to bring him back to life. And the ultimate truth is that God understands our pain because as Jesus, he was mocked and killed on a cross, a brutal and humiliating death. I told you earlier that my dad screamed out when his son, my brother, died. And I later realized that God knows exactly what my dad felt. We're gonna be wounded by this world. Jesus is the one true wounded healer. And if we want to participate in being wounded healers alongside him, we can't just focus on the beauty and the goodness. We need to grieve the brokenness. We need to become fluent in lament as we acknowledge the wounds of this world. Please hear me correctly. The invitation of Jesus is to become a wounded healer. But right now, in this space, I want us all to sit in the broken. Don't rush to the beauty. We need to dwell in the pain and anger and sorrow of this broken world, crying out to God together. We're inviting you to practice this together as an HSM community. Let's learn collectively what it means to lament the broken world around us and within us. As we support each other on this journey, may we know that God can take a beating. So give him all your anger and confusion. Batter him with your doubts and pain. He's big enough to take it.